Coming up next, we have Ian back, and we are suitably fired up, and we are looking at something that always causes problems, which is the coordination of new policies amongst neighbouring countries. This is basically how European countries collaborate to create uniformity, which should be the strength that lifts these countries up, but is it achievable? This session will be in cooperation with the European Tourism Council, coming right up.
Okay, this is a panel on collaboration. On the one hand, we've seen tremendous collaboration to produce and distribute vaccines in record times and vaccinate hundreds of millions, billions of people. On the other, we haven't seen a whole lot of coordination between countries on travel restrictions, limited coordination even within a political entity like the European Union, and even within Britain, no coordination between England, Wales, Scotland, remarkably. So to discuss collaboration in travel and tourism, please welcome Eduardo Santander, Director General of the European Tourism Council. Eduardo. Norbert Fiebig, President of the German Travel Association, the DRV. Éric Dresin, Secretary General of the ECTAA, which is the European Association of Travel Agents and Tour Operator Associations. Welcome, Éric. And Patrick Torrent, who's President of Necstour, which represents Europe's regions. Patrick. Well, we failed on the diversity on this panel. You'll just have to excuse that, I'm afraid. But maybe we can take some questions, hopefully from women in the course of this. Eduardo, we're talking about collaboration. To what extent is there collaboration now, and where is collaboration breaking down?
Well, Ian, there is collaboration. The question at glance is there enough? And my answer to that is no. Why is that, in my very humble opinion? Is that, taking into account this forum, for instance, and many others that we all attend and you moderate and so on, is the main issues that we preach to believers. And the paradigm shift that it's been discussed this morning, it's facing a very important quest with the increasing challenges that create that kind of competition between sustainable practice, which is the main topic of this very forum, and the increasing competitiveness globally anyway, because COVID has accentuated that too. Let's admit it, of course we had to collaborate for vaccinations and measures at the European level and restrictions and so on. And it was a very painful road, because somehow Europeans come only together where things go very wrong, and that's sometimes very sad to say. I think the complexity of the situation now goes beyond our own business. I'm very glad. I was amazed by the previous panel, because they actually mentioned that uncomfortable truth of tourism too, which is that the problems that we're facing are so much bigger than ourselves. And when we address our own problems and we complain about the issues that we have, I think we should do it in a different forum. We should address other kind of sectors of the society too. And we're not doing that yet. And I blame myself for that. I think we should be reaching to people from the transportation, obviously with the local communities, but definitely with other sectors like agriculture and so on. Why? Because the problems that we're facing and the complexity is about climate change, digital hyperconnectivity, pressure on democratic values, shift of global order. That's too big only for tourism. But we need to preach our values, our solutions, our aim to collaborate with any other sector, to all those that don't believe on us. And this is maybe where we are still missing that very much needed collaboration.
Okay. Patrick, your organization is all about collaboration between Europe's regions. Is there sufficient collaboration at the moment? And if not, why not?
Obviously, it's not enough. Like Eduardo said, from the point of view of the regions, we need more Europe than ever, more capacity to have influence in the member states, because if not, it will be really complicated to have a real recovery for our activity in the travel industry, and it's absolutely important to have this capacity of coordination. At this moment now, the regions having a really hard work in the first part of this crisis, in the emergency phase of this pandemic, working in three periods. First one in activation, injecting liquidity in the industry. It was the first aid for the industry in the starting of this pandemic, of this crisis. It was thanks to the capacity of the regions with his own resources. Then we have two main challenges, that is evolution and revolution. Evolution is really the capacity to transform the activity and to transform the sector. But we cannot transform anything if we don't have anything. It's for this reason that activation is absolutely mandatory, and now we are not in the final phase of the emergency mode, because it's true that in the last season, when we thought that everything could be activated, it's not true. There are different destinations in Europe that are suffering a lot, and we need this capacity to activate the industry, to work close to the production tissue of this activity in order to be able to transform it. For the transformation, we have a lot of measures of elements, but the first phase is the revolution. And I think here we had two different speeches, one for the main speaker from the point of view of philosophy, but now with the millennials, where the revolution is more like identified and designed. Is we just need to follow this way. But first of all, activation and evolution with the project that we had in the past.
Okay, when you talk about transformation, let's be specific. Transformation to what?
Transformation, we cannot go to the point where we were in 14 March 2020. We need to go faster, not to have more tourism, but to have better tourism. And to have better tourism is absolutely crucial to work, first of all, with the residents at the center of our focus, of our strategy, of our activity. We used to talk about private-public partnership. It's necessary to talk about private-public residence partnership, with the residents in the center of the discussion.
Okay, very good. I've just been told we have 15 minutes less for this session than we thought, so we have to behave accordingly. Éric, we're talking about collaboration, but is there even a common understanding of sustainability in Europe, would you say?
Not today, and that's one of the issues that we have to solve. The association like ECTAA operating at European level, and Eduardo and Patrick will say the same, has one of the role is to help having the same level playing field and understanding about sustainability. There are some explanation about that. Level of economic development, I would say, that's one parameter, but it's sustainability is also a very a concept, a cultural concept, and the understanding of sustainability is not the same in Northern Europe and Southern Europe, for instance. So we need to engage all the stakeholders, for travel agents and tour operators, for instance, in order to agree on the concept and work together so that there is a move forward, very ambitious and immediate.
Okay. Norbert, if I can come to you. Again, collaboration is the subject of the issue, subject of the session, but is this the biggest issue for us, or should we be talking about something else?
Collaboration is needed on a European basis, no doubts about that. But I want to be a bit more specific. Once we are talking sustainability, and in the public discussion, we are, as an industry, more and more under pressure. And why is that? You see the topic global warming. Once you are talking about global warming, you are talking about the carbon footprint. Looking to what we are producing, where we do produce the carbon footprint, looking to the entire travel, 75% of the carbon footprint we are doing is related to transportation. And once we look into transportation, mainly related to flights. And the flights are the backbone of our, at least, international business. So that is a tricky question there. So we shouldn't remain solely in the old habits of argumentation that we are, as an industry, doing so much good to the receiving countries, socially, economically, politically. We are needed to change a little bit, and we need to look how to at least lower our carbon footprint. And the airlines are doing a lot. They are modernizing their fleets and reducing the consumption of kerosene by that, and they are trying to blend kerosene with biofuels, but that will be finally not enough. So what we urgently need to do, and that needs the overall the global pressure and the pressure of the European Union, we need, with much more pressure, you see the technical solutions, and they are around. They are not on an industry level so far. So there's no production to feed all the aircraft so far, but that needs the pressure of the industry, the political will in order to get that done. And we don't have decades of time for that. And it needs the will of the political side, the will of our industry, and it needs, to be honest, lots of money, lots of financial resources. And I believe we need to find a fight for that. Otherwise, we are getting more and more under pressure, and we need to avoid that questions marks are done on our freedom to travel. That will be not acceptable.
Okay, and so urgent collaborations needed on alternative aviation fuels. And are you saying that really the industry should drop the slogan we hear all the time that tourism is a force for good? Should the industry drop the slogan we hear all the time that tourism is a force for good? Because we have this urgent...
No, we shouldn't stop that. That is the case. And if we would stop that, and if we would force to stop that, because we don't have the freedom to fly whenever it's needed, we will cause a chaos in the receiving countries, which are relying very much on the people we are sending them. So that is a very important. We need to secure that for the future.
Okay, so it's not enough to say that. That's what you're saying.
The political pressure so far is not enough in order to allocate the necessary political will, and in order to allocate the necessary financial resources in order to come as soon as possible to the alternative fuels.
Okay, Eduardo, everything is subordinate to reducing the carbon footprint of flying. Do you agree?
I don't agree. I think thank you. I don't agree on that, and we have to confront some realities, and they are just in front of our noses. You know, we'll never reach a carbon net zero tourism industry. This is an ox. And, you know, we'll have to confront this reality thinking that we cannot change what we cannot measure. And this is where we at the European Travel Commission level, we're trying exactly to change that. You know, we need to partner. So I was referring, it's about governance. You cannot work in a niche. You cannot work in your rabbit hole and not leave it and say, okay, this is good for only our industry, or the previous speaker say sector, industry. There are words that are maybe worrisome because they don't talk about community, they don't talk about, you know, global problems. We're talking about issues that Patrick mentioned, like, you know, the engagement with the local community goes beyond to talking to them. It's just to apply policies and governances that are good for them, and whatever is good for definitely residents is good for visitors too. But how do you change that is maybe the crucial question then. it can be changed. It's a renaissance. The previous futurism philosopher was saying it's a rinascimento. You know, everything takes some time. But you know, we have the time. Let's be also optimistic. And if there is that power that tourism has, is to create that optimism, you know, towards exchange. The previous young speakers say, you know, I want to cross borders to understand other people. And that understanding that maybe we're missing here. Because when I refer to, you know, finding those measurable indicators that we don't have yet, we're talking about things as complex as water consumption. What is the water consumption of this conference? And how does it affect the community of Évora on Alentejo? How much carbon do we produce if we would have done this differently and so on? And for that we need, it's a complex matrix. The philosopher was saying also, we should have technology working for us and not the opposite way around. So there is technology there for that. But it has to be so transversal, so interdisciplinary, that I don't even believe in having just a minister for transport or for tourism. It has to be so embedded in such a portfolio that give us those indicators to make possible changes. I do truly believe a change is possible, but you know, a change starts with single steps, and single steps that are very much dependent on each and every of us. And I do believe that many, this conference is maybe a good example, but what I miss in this conference, and I told to Christian before, is that we need people completely not understanding tourism, with people challenging us all the time, non-believers, people that come from road transportation, from the agriculture sector, from aviation. Why not? Aviation is so much impacting whatever we're deciding, even discussing today.
Okay.
Just to finish this, I have 2 missions this week in Porto and next week in Dubrovnik in Croatia. And because of the lack of connectivity now, which is heavily affecting our business now, I'm more probably doubling my carbon footprint compared to previous levels to 2019, even if I don't want. So you see, the dialogue has to be so fluid between subsector and different ministries, different disciplines of the economy too. And this is where the challenge is. The challenge is not in this room among ourselves. We all know what we have to do.
Okay, the industry spends too much time talking to itself and needs to be challenged. That's true. But for now, all you've got is me. So you say we have time. The IPCC latest report didn't suggest that. 2030, we have to have acted, or it's too late to keep warming to 2 degrees. So there isn't much time. There's 8 years. 8.5 years.
A decade is, I think, it's a long time. I mean, if you consider that every single action that we have, but you know, we have to.
But we've been talking. I'm sorry. The first IPCC report came out in 1988. We've been talking about this for decades already, and now we've got less than a decade now.
But you know, humankind is something's very curious. You know, in a sense,
humankind can prevaricate. We know that.
We don't change until we have to, and you know. Futurists, you know, open my hand saying, you know, you needed that crisis. We needed maybe the wake-up call. We needed, you know, like just to feel the cold water. And I truly believe in optimism for, I think, the channel is exactly tourism. While you communicate through your local communities, your own expression of your product, your offer, I think you can praise new values for people, and this is what we can do now, is to change the normal cities in the mass tourist, if you want,
okay,
and to change it and bring them into that direction.
Okay, so I can't just debate with you, Eduardo, but if you're driving a car, it's no good hitting the brake after you've crashed, is it? Éric, can I ask you what you think about that? But also, what can your members, travel agents, tour operators do to promote sustainable tourism, to promote this offer?
I'll try to be brief and to explain that it's so complex, but sustainability has to be, it's not only talking about sustainability, you have to sell it and you have to buy it. Otherwise, there's no sense for us to be here. We can collaborate as entities such as associations, government, as Norbert also explained, but we need to have players, private companies, to help doing that. And travel agent tour operators, their DNA is really to be the matchmakers between sustainable offer and the demand for more sustainable tourism. So they have a role in identifying what's existing in destinations. They have a role in promoting that together with the consumer organization in the outbound countries, for instance. And this matchmaking is essential to have this active as quickly as possible if you want to be looking only at the next year. So there's a lot to do. It's not only up to the government and to the public authorities to do that, but also to companies such as travel agents and tour operators, and they are good at doing that.
Okay, but Patrick, I wonder if you think we'll never reach net zero, but is there a conflict between sustainability, the drive for sustainability, and the inherent competition in industry, in tourism, between destinations and so on?
Yes, I think the zero carbon emissions in tourism will be really complicated. But at the same time, we need to have this objective as a goal, because if not, it will be impossible to have any evolution about it. We think that the tourism must be in the center of the solution of this crisis. We think that it's we cannot forget that it's absolutely crucial to think that the capacity of people to travel and to and the values of travel will be present always in the future. It's not a social thing that obviously our behavior will change and we will stay at home. Our curiosity as a persons and as a travelers will be finished, will be over. No, obviously people must be ready to know, to understand, to open mind, to have dialogue, to connect cultures and connect thinkings. But it's for this reason that we think that the purpose of the tourism must be to give wealth through the values of travel to the whole community, not exclusively to the industry sector, as Eduardo said, but to the whole community, because we think that the transversality of tourism could offer this capacity to offer wellness for all these communities, with 5 axes. Residence at the center, as Eduardo said as well, is absolutely crucial. Better places to live and better places to visit. What is good for residents is good for visitors. Second one, with the data at the center, is our project from Necstour, Tourism of Tomorrowland, is focused on this, data at the center. We cannot manage what you cannot measure. With the conception that the climate emergency is our first priority and our first challenge now. Not obviously the health crisis is close to be over, but the climate emergency is behind it, and we need to face it clearly. With this, Tourism Declares, for example, that Jeremy Smith, the CEO of Tourism Declares yesterday, presented here. And the financial mechanism to support this transition is crucial from all the administration levels, from the public levels. And last but not least, the governance, I think Eduardo mentioned it as well, is absolutely necessary that in the European Commission we need to work on this way, not with silos, not with the isolated areas of work, but with this transversal vision. And regions, let me say, must be at the center of this discussion, but because we are close to the tourism experience, and I think we need to be there.
Okay, that's very good. Norbert, can I ask you, the need for change is clear. We hear all the time that consumer attitudes and behaviour are changing. I have to suspend my disbelief because I see more and more people driving around in SUVs. Half the traffic are SUVs now, and you see people ordering unimaginable amounts of stuff online with ridiculous amounts of packaging, including plastics, which apparently we all want to get rid of. So it seems contradictory. So is consumer behaviour really changing, or are just the answers in surveys changing?
Yeah, they think in sustainable way, but they don't take the decisions, for example, for a final booking, not on that basis. There is a big gap. I believe the big gap is not there with the youngsters we had on stage here. They decide purely on a sustainable way, and they want to have clear answers from us, from the industry. And I disagree. We can't continue the old-fashioned argumentation. They need to have precise, concrete answers, and we need to give the answers, and we need to have goals where how we try to achieve, maybe not to be carbon neutral, but on the way to that. And that is achievable if we all have the political and technical will to do so. And we can't remain to the old arguments that we are doing so good. The people, the sensitivity will raise. The younger people have a higher sensitivity, and they will decide in the future on that basis. And I do agree with the middle age and oldest. Maybe the gap is still too big, but that will be changed.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we have a microphone to take questions from the floor. If someone could indicate whether we do quickly. Okay. Well, there's a guy here who would like to ask a question, if you can get the microphone to him. While you're doing that, Eduardo, let me ask you about that then. What is the driver for change? How do you see behavior changing? Is it government action? Is it businesses taking action? Is it investors making requirements? Is it consumers? Is it communities? Or is it social political movements? What's going to drive change?
It's a little bit of everything, but I always mention two words, which are leadership and citizenship. They very much go together. Leadership, we know that we need to change in the way our governance is. It's not only about tourism. It's about how we treat each other. How do we understand each other, but also within the European framework, which is the topic of the panel. How do we deal, with a country which is, by nature maybe our competitor tourism-wise, but then we have to collaborate now because of COVID restrictions or whatever happens next, like a climate emergency, a country start not having enough water, or they have wildfires or whatever. So it's that response that requires a very different leadership that I don't see out there yet, and I hope that new generations will, change that. But then it's citizenship. That is our own little actions every day, starting with voting for the right people, starting, to use less your car, starting, not to buy a SUV if you really know that it's much more contaminating, the environment and so on. So again, I think it seems impossible until it's done. And I think we need to create that kind of optimism. And, Luis Araújo, the president of Tourism Portugal and president of EDC, mentioned that and posted that this morning, saying it is so important, to believe in an optimistic society, because if not, there's nothing to do. Otherwise, like the futurists will say, we're living the decadence before the big shock. No?
Okay, but if you say, think before you buy an SUV, you're putting it back onto the consumer. And of course, there's a big, huge marketing industry encouraging people to buy SUVs.
Yeah, but good
how about governments say, don't produce SUVs?
Arguably, a good governance would not allow automobile lobbyists, to check, to sell those cars and, to sell them, with wrong, but we need to create that sense of transparency that it's not there. We don't know what we're consuming. We were told 10 years ago that diesel cars were good. And now we cannot, you see, we need that kind of sense of trust. And trust is something that, it's not embedded in our societies yet. And we don't trust each other as destinations, we don't trust each other as countries or our governments. Until that trust is not given, nothing will change.
Okay, we've got time for one question, but please, not a contribution. It's got to be a question. Or it's going to be 30 seconds. If tell me and I'll say it.
I just want to mention something for your thinking. 20 years ago, Portugal, talking about tourism, was the Algarve, Madeira, and maybe Lisbon. 20 years later, tourism is spread all over the country. And all the communities, all the locals, all the residents now know quite well the impact of not having the tourists. I would say tourism for the Portuguese all around the country was one of the main factors of sustainability, economical and environmental. Why? Because if you lose the people living in these communities because they will move to Lisbon or to move to the coast, the terrain will be abandoned, and you will have the fires, you will have the problems all around, etc., etc. So when we're talking about the way we can deal with increase of tourism, we have to be very careful on that, because one thing is talking about communities in Brazil or in Africa.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have
when
to
we're
stop
talking
you.
about,
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. It wasn't a question. I'm sorry, but thank you for the contribution. Look, we have to finish. So I'll ask each of you for a final word on what should be different, and let's keep it brief. What should be different as travel resumes at volume? Patrick.
What will be different? Well, we will have...
No, what must be different, not what will be different, because we don't know that anything will be different.
Not more tourism, yes, better tourism is the key sentence for me.
Better tourism,
better
not more
tourism, much more than more tourism. It's crucial to change the understanding of the ecosystem in tourism in terms of to improve the quality of the service, the quality of experience, and obviously avoiding the bad externalities of the mass tourism.
Okay, but the whole industry is geared to numbers. The whole industry, the UNWTO produces the numbers all the time. The WTTC produces the numbers all the time. So how is this going to change?
The best change we need is a behavioral change. Behavioral change in the industry, behavioral change in the public actors, behavioral change obviously in the consumer as well. But the consumer is changing. And really first the change of the citizenship that offers us the option to change in the behavior of the rest of industry.
Okay, thank you. Éric, what should be different?
It's a very, very tricky question to reply in 1 minute. I think creativity, if I look at the tour operators and travel agents, in order to offer the clients sustainable, to offer the sustainable product that are available, and maybe that help them to discover that they can behave in a more sustainable way. And just an example, we always think about leisure tourism. Business travel is important. Eduardo is experiencing today the difficulties to travel in Europe nowadays, but companies need to have sustainability reports in their yearly reporting. Here, travel agents have a role to improve the carbon footprints on all the companies, not only of the travel agents and let's say the consumers, but all the players in the economy.
Okay, are you hopeful of the big platforms, the likes of Booking, Expedia, Airbnb, playing a similar role? Because at the moment they don't.
That's a very good question. I think that those companies will change their business model, or adapt their business model as soon as they see that they can get money. So if you don't have some players going forward and moving ahead the concepts and creating a demand, then you will not get those big players there. But they will definitely go there as soon as they see that there's a financial interest. I'm sad to say, but it's the way.
But it's the truth. Éric, thank you. Norbert, what has to be different?
I believe we need to urgently undertake every possible action in order to reduce our carbon footprint, in order to save our freedom of travel, and in order to save our positive impact to the receiving countries.
Okay, that was beautifully succinct. Eduardo.
I think everything has to change, and this is not nothing like when it comes to tourism in particular, is the quest of, do we want Europe to be the first or to be the best? And to be the best nowadays has nothing to do with numbers. It has to do with, what is your contribution? What is your contribution, local communities, where's your contribution to businesses, what is your contribution to future generations, and so on. And measure contribution is like a moral obligation that we have too. And I do truly believe that Europe should have that leadership. It has it already. I always say that the world is always looking to Europe when it comes to innovation, creativity. And there is a lot of solutions there, sometimes in front of our noses, and we don't see them. So my final word is really of hope, and that really make a change. It doesn't also have to cost the business model of a company. It only takes maybe just a few months to readapt and to make yourself accountant individually, also as a company. We all have to give something to receive something too.
Okay, you've been a great panel dealing with the reduction in time we had, which we could see as a metaphor for the reducing time we have for dealing with climate change. But perhaps 3 quick thoughts from me. Cooperation's fundamental to us as human beings. We're social creatures, but competition is fundamental to capitalism. So how do we square that circle? COVID caused a crisis, yes, but it also showed what can be done to transform behavior, look at you all in your masks, and to transform the economy. We've been told for decades that the money's not there, that governments must reduce spending. But in COVID, the money was there on a scale unimaginable, really, since the Second World War. So we need to redirect those resources and effort, it seems to me. So please thank Patrick, Éric, Norbert, and Eduardo.